Naturetrek podcasts, bringing wildlife to you in your living room. In this episode, we're talking conservation on the Iberian Peninsula, as tour leader Byron Palacios tells us about the thrill of searching for Iberian wolves and lynx in Spain. Hello and welcome to another Naturetrek podcast. Now joining me today is Byron, who's an Ecuadorian ecologist and field ornithologist who's been leading for Naturetrek for over 15 years. He's an excellent birder with a vast knowledge of the neotropical and western Palearctic avifauna and has contributed a number of important discoveries to Ecuadorian ornithology, all of which have been published in scientific magazines. He's also actively involved in many birding and conservation programs in Spain and is an authority on Iberian wildlife, which is what he's going to be talking to us about today. He's joining me on the line now from his home in Dorset. Byron, hello, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Well, very, very well and locked down, actually. How could it be? Enjoying a lot of the wildlife around, the quietness. So yeah, so far so good. So far so good.
Fantastic.
But also, really looking forward to be out back in action, traveling around. So hope that happens soon.
Aren't we all? Definitely. I should have been out in Baja in March and would be off to St Kilda in July. So yes, what tours would you have been leading, Byron?
Well, it's mainly the Americas, that's which is my local patch, being from South America originally, and obviously Spain and a bit of Eastern Europe as well. So that's my current patch, really.
And Spain is in fact really the area that you're going to be talking to us about today. And specifically two species that are quite close to your heart, and these are the Iberian wolf and Iberian lynx. But first of all, can you just give us an overview of where this actually is situated? What is the Iberian Peninsula? What's meant by this?
Yes, we know generally as Britons that when you bring to your mind Spain, you automatically think of Costa Brava, Costa del Sol, the sunshine and the sunshine and beaches. But actually, we forget, even people into wildlife tend to forget the Spain, located in the Iberian Peninsula, which comprehends Portugal as well as the little strip on the west. But they're actually a very isolated area geographically. This is what made things great and interesting, because the Pyrenees obviously isolate Spain and Portugal, being the Iberian Peninsula itself, in a completely different, let's say, an inland island, if you could want to call it that way. And hence, the different organisms have developed into their own. I mean, we have Iberian magpies, formerly called as your wing magpie. We have Spanish imperial eagle. We have Iberian chiffchaff. We have, pretty much subspecies as well on the Iberian Peninsula. And, mammals-wise, we have Iberian wolf and Iberian lynx. This latter one, happened to be one of the rarest cats in the world, which was really about to disappear in the late 80s. So this is what, make Spain and the Iberian Peninsula quite unique within Europe.
Okay, and you lead our tours there to see both those species, wolves and lynx. Can you start off first with the wolves and give us an overview of the Iberian wolf? When most people think of a wolf, they think of what is going to be a grey wolf that we're familiar with, of course, in North America. So how is the Iberian wolf different? Can you tell us a bit about its appearance and behaviour, habitat?
Yeah, completely. After this isolation I was talking about, this trapped population of lynxes in the geographically trapped in the Iberian Peninsula, evolved according to the habitat. Is a mountainous, habitat up in the mountains, Cantabrian Mountains, the foothills of the Pyrenees, and then you have all the plateau, across the these northern foothills, Midlands, and the south, with a lot of sierras or mountain chains along, which create microhabitats. Now, although 3 or 4 of the main habitats in Spain, particularly, or in the Iberian Peninsula, are quite unchangeable in terms of they keep quite unique throughout the year. The mountains provide a very good variation of temperature, perfect for these animals. Now, Iberian wolves particularly evolved in size. Firstly, they're slightly smaller than European grey wolves, and also chunkier, muscular, because they move in mountainous areas, so they develop more muscular bodies, and in order to keep this very local gene flowing, their packs, number of packs, are really small. We found up to 11 individuals per pack, unlike grey wolves that they live up to 20 or 22 or even 25, if it's the case of the North American one. That's one of the main changes. The second one is their diets. The diets are really specialized between red deer and wild boar. A lot of people think that they go on deer mainly, but I think and based on evidence and a lot of drop-ins and things, it's mainly wild boar that they eat, and there's plenty across the peninsula. And also how secretive they are. They really vary their way of living according to the seasons. So during the winters, when they're most active and they are hunting the most, there's a lot of vulnerable prey during the winters. Some of the Spanish northern winters in the mountains are the hardest in Europe, with temperatures lowering down to -30 and a lot of snow. And they move quite comfortably in this kind of weather. Now, this way of living have put them on a sort of, I wouldn't say verge of extinction, but the problems with the actual Iberian wolves at the moment is it's where do they actually spread? Their territories could go, one territory could spread in 250 square kilometers. But the importance of the alpha male and the dominant female, alpha female, in order to keep the pack successful, in order to control the numbers, is paramount important. And this is what people need to understand. Packs are well limited geographically, so it will be really, it's not like one pack produces youngsters and then these youngsters will split and form another pack. It's more complex than that. They probably take up to 5 years or 5 generations, I would say, for that pack to produce an potential alpha male that will take their own pack independently to another area, unless the alpha male is being replaced. You put it like this. So hence the amount of numbers as well. If we take the most sort of approximate figure of the estimated amount of wolves in the Iberian Peninsula at the moment, they are just bordering the 2,000, being the north of Spain the main area for them to live, Cantabrian Mountains mainly. Now, what is their main threats? Well, wolves are being for centuries, or even in fairy tales, being completely stigmatized because it's the big bad wolf, but it's mainly in reality, it's mainly because they're so well organized, it's such a intelligent organisms that they tend to think like us, so they compete directly with human beings. And what we were trying to do, I think, for decades. I don't know when was the last wolf killed in the UK, 14th century, 15th century. But it was because of that reason, because we thought they're always bad and they was causing damage to what they is food for us as well. They go after livestock. We like after stock as well. and it's now an economic income for farmers and revenue for these places where they occur. Now, they have to be controlled, unfortunately, and this is part of the conservation sort of program that's been taken by the EU in the Iberian Peninsula at the moment. So the legislation allowed to control the population in the northern bank of the River Duero, and the one in the southern bank is untouchable. But this is mainly due to a lot of political interest as well, and but it's also to protect or keep the farming or the cow ranching or livestock business going. Now, having said that, there's very little evidence of attacks of Iberian wolves to livestock. I mean, I could point it out based on the 2018 results from the Soprano, the environmental Spanish police, that after 35 reports by farmers from livestock being killed by wolves, allegedly, 3 of them were actually young wolves that actually killed livestock. The others were fake.
So how are they being faked?
Well, farmers obviously they will never agree with the protection or the laws. So it's so difficult to they have to prove when they want to claim or make a claim of a livestock loss by a wolf, and that's obviously scientific. It's not like in the old days I say, oh, they killed me 3, so I'm going to charge compensation for 3 at the end of the year. It's not like that. It's more complex now. The Soprano police sent a special unit to actually do a very comprehensive research or investigation about the size of the bite, the size of the of all the evidence they collect, and they could dish out some accurate results. And as I said, hence the is very low. And also the other reason is unless it's a very a submissive alpha, a submissive male is being thrown out from the pack and is just meandering around young, they're more adventurous than adult individuals, because they're clever. They're not going to go where there are nowadays the farmers and shepherds are more sophisticated with machinery, with 4x4 trucks and all the stuff. They're not going to get close to them. Firstly, because that means danger. That means that the life's going to be at risk, and also because they have plenty of food. They have plenty of food in the wild, plenty of wild boar, plenty of deer. So there's really little reasons for them to go and attack. And this has been proved by many people who dedicate their lives to study Iberian wolves, and it's been proved.
Yeah, you see stories of this in conservation, don't you? Just all over the world. And I used to be a wildlife guide up in the Hebrides, and there are similar stories with the reintroduction. I realise these wolves haven't been reintroduced, but with the reintroductions of the white-tailed eagles up there, and the clashes that they had with sheep farmers, and sheep farmers accused them of taking the lambs, and SNH would compensate the farmers for any lambs that were taken. But when you weigh this up, the cost of a lamb, the market value of a lamb is anywhere between sort of 50 to 100 pounds. And when you now see what the actual income value of tourism to see white-tailed eagles is, and what that brings to the economy, according to the RSPB website, this brings in £5 million on Mull alone every year, and over £2 million a year on Isla. And you do have to sort of be sensible with it and try and weigh up that, and it's an unfortunate thing in conservation that to protect a species, they need to be made more valuable alive than dead, which is what the white-tailed eagles have done, and that's a sort of rare success story, really. Do you see similar perceptions sort of being taken on board with the wolves? What is the perception of the locals? Clearly the farmers don't really like them. What do you pick up on when you're taking our groups there and traveling to see the wolves? Are they
Yeah,
liked? Do you think ecotourism is helping them? Is it going to play a good role in protecting them?
well, ecotourism has been a terrific tool for conservation, not just towards wildlife like important wildlife and key wildlife like Iberian wolves, but for the locals, that they really noticed that in the last 15 years we've been doing there, or even more than that, we have brought that interest, to say, hey, hold on a second, this could be one of the main revenues that you could have, instead of getting rid of them. Now, the most important thing of the process, I think, has been that we can said to them, while you're in the wild and when you meet up, with the shepherd or the farmer, you do tell them that there's no need to be against them. There is a control. There is a control that some of the counties in Spain are, quite good at. Some of them get some revenue by inviting hunters to kill 5 or 6 wolves a year. Some others, there's a dedicated group of rangers that monitor them, and they know which one to take in order to control numbers. And both things, as I said, so far have been working together really well. It's trying to reach that balance that I think we are sort of on top. The problem now is the poaching, and this is why the environmental police is working really hard towards this. Now, the other thing that benefits the wolves indirectly, it's especially in the areas of occurrence of the Cantabrian brown bear, is this animal itself, because they are protected, strictly protected, brown bears in Spain, and they do share habitat. They overlap. They don't compete because, as you know, brown bears are omnivorous. They could go on carcass during the winter. Some of them don't really hibernate over there, but they're not direct competitors with wolves. But the protection of brown bear actually have benefited the status of Iberian wolves. But as you said, people are understanding way more, especially the locals and farmers, including farmers and shepherds. They're understanding the importance of keeping a wolf, also for their genetic beneficial of the prey. Wild boars, and also all the type of deer down there do benefit from having a natural predator. The genetic value is better. Hence the grass, the habitat, the meadows. So it's when you live and understand to this, I said, look, you have now this meadow. You see, it's incredibly high quality for your cattle, but that's because to the wolves, believe it or not, because they keep that improvement of the genetic value on everything, which also goes to the animals, which are down the lowest bit of the trophic chain. And this is how, I think we get into that point in the sort of overview of this topic. Now, whether wolves are going to be always a problem, unfortunately, so far, that is going to be always a topic of quite polemic, I was going to say, because while doing what we have done, increasing the ecotourism down there by taking our groups to see these amazing animals, a lot of the locals are doing exactly the same thing, which 20 years ago wouldn't happen. Not even 10 years ago didn't happen.
Yeah, and of course what you've just said is very reminiscent of the best well-known example of this is, of course, in Yellowstone National Park, where in the 1930s, the rangers of the park, it was decided that they wanted to kill all of the wolves so that they could increase the population of ungulates for hunting. So by 1936, all of the wolves there were killed. And slowly but surely, they got exactly what they wanted. All of the ungulates, the moose, the deer, the elk, just grew exponentially. And it slowly began to destroy the park. They were browsing on too many saplings and trees, so beavers therefore had no trees and branches to actually be able to make their dams with to store water. This meant that there was actually wildfires across the park, and the herds were very large of the deer and the elk, but they were an unhealthy herd. They had all of the elderly and the sick, which of course the wolves take, don't they? That's what they prey upon. They don't prey upon the very fit species. And a lot of animals started to leave the park, but they reintroduced them in 1995, and within 1 year, species that hadn't been seen there in 60 years were returning. The songbirds were returning, and now the park is very healthy, and this just underpins how they really are a keystone species in an environment. If you take them out, the ecosystem will collapse.
Yeah, and obviously reintroduction management were completely different. I think it could be in the long term more difficult than controlling native populations, in this case the Iberian wolf. But indeed, they improved everything. And not only that, in terms of conservation, you will see when we started leading trips down or taking trips down to these areas, which are incredibly remote areas in Spain, where people are still thinking in pesetas rather than in euros. They were really hard to find a place to stay. But after all the years being operating there, there's plenty now, because they have noticed the economical benefit they have found from the activity we have promoted. I mean, in a lot of places, I think apart from the French guy who started doing wolf trips in Spain, we were the pioneer. I mean, Naturetrek really pioneered this activity, which, as I said, has brought a lot of benefit for those local villages, and so those local areas and individual businesses that we use, such as accommodation, hospitality, food, local supermarkets, everything. And people actually see that, and they say, wait a minute, as I said earlier on, this is working and is benefiting. And let's be honest, in order to jump on the cats, I think conservation, and I know people don't consider this, but conservation sometimes is a bit cruel. We have to take a bit of something to actually keep that something going. So controlling the numbers of Iberian wolves would keep this balance we need, the balance they need, and we also avoid in the future this problems with the species if they go out of our hands, because that is the way, I think, as very intelligent animals we are, that's the way to control and keep them going, still in the wild in natural way, but in their vast, because they have vast territories to move around, that without clashing with each other, and just benefit both from them.
And what about the press's perception of ecotourism? Do they share the public's views? You've just highlighted that there are more accommodations now than there have been in years, more places to eat, more places to go to and spend your money, which is what the Naturetrek tours are now doing. Is this reflected in the media?
It has reflecting a lot. Now, a lot of the media, obviously, and this is, we're going back again what I said about the Cantabrian brown bear, because they're protected, and because there is an interest of the local counties, to go and to these areas to support their an emblematic animal for a lot of the villages in the areas that this animal occurred. But that has brought great benefit as well for the wolves. Now, the press could be at times a bit realistic, but also others could be really more on the side of the fiction rather than on the actual reality, which, you know what I mean, it could mislead the local with some information. We have tackled them. I remember having more than 2 or 3 articles in the local press down there, and also just 2 or 3 newspapers that published the wrong thing, by us disturbing them, us being there affecting the wildlife, when we said, no, we're doing completely the opposite, But you need to, and actually I invited them to I stopped giving them a chance over the phone or interviews. Just said, just come with us, and see yourself, and then you write. So
that's interesting. So they're actually saying that you're disturbing the wolves. So they're almost taking it from the conservation of the wolves point of view, rather than saying you shouldn't be here glorifying seeing these wolves. These are something to be deemed as a pest, and we should kill them.
Exactly, which is completely the wrong idea of and this is what I said. I mean, people wildlife wise have this sort of huge gap of that unfortunately falls on ignorance, and if you want to write about something, you need to know about it, and you need to go and see it yourself and experience it yourself. So this journalist, I remember, I took over, their perspective was completely changed. They said, oh, I didn't imagine it was like this, but so there you go. So if you are actually sat there very quietly in a spot, and the wolves are 500 meters away, and you are there with your telescope, they probably know some clever animals, probably know you're there, but you're not disturbing.
Yeah.
You're not, I mean, they wouldn't be there if you've been disturbing, because this is what people don't, you don't know much about canine, especially a wolf, which is a very, very intelligent animal. They simply wouldn't be there. They simply wouldn't be there. So I'm always hoping that every year that passes and we successfully see this animal thriving in nature, especially in a country. I'm talking mainly about Spain, because Portugal is not really that involved in the wolf conservation, as the main population is in Spain. That despite the problems and certain issues that they're still facing with the local governments, the population is thriving, not just because we are there contributing to this, but also because the locals' mentality have changed. We made that change, and whoever goes there to do it and to show them that this is what they need to protect, this is what they need to handle as their natural treasure, handle appropriately. That's how they're going to keep everything flourishing and in the right place.
And when you say we have changed, are you meaning Naturetrek and running the tours there, or tourists as a whole?
Well, wildlife tourism in general. I mean, we started going pioneer in some areas that nobody, not even locals, have gone, and now we have other companies, following the same steps, or other countries as well, organizing the same kind of tourism, ecotourism adventures down there as well. So no matter who you're going with, no matter who's going there to do it, but as long as they are, supporting the cause and supporting, understanding the way of life of these lovely animals, that's the perception that the locals will learn and will absorb, from you. So yeah, I really hope this keeps going. So far, I would say so good. It's going very well.
That's great to hear. And you've outlined the conservation of the wolves. What is it actually like to be on tour with you? I'm thinking of a more immersive description now of what it is actually like when you're going out there. Is there a lot of time spent trying to track them and find them? Are you out in the cold, up in the mountains? Presumably you're sitting on a hill with a scope looking for them. What could our clients expect from going on a tour with you?
Well, firstly, is the breathtaking habitat you're in. You go to these amazing areas, completely remote, right in the middle of nowhere. You barely see a human, and sometimes, we are, sat in the top of this beautiful hill scanning for wolves, and suddenly all the wildlife turn up. Maybe the old goshawk, the old golden eagle, and then carry on, watching wolves. Sometimes we're lucky. We hear them howling, we see them really active, or the youngsters playing each other. Sometimes they're not, we have to come back and try it again another time. But it's just a breathtaking habitat you are surrounded with, pure. And sometimes you think that, oh my God, am I in Europe? Yes, I'm in Europe. So I think it's a whole package of everything, really, Sarah. Not just the wolves themselves that they are the main target, but other different, very interesting wildlife habitats, and little villages, people, because we always have the odd break to take a cafe after a very busy morning, early morning, working hard to see all these wonderful animals, and as I said, all that habitat, Romanesque churches, this historic or prehistoric even features. Everything together is an amazing package that you get there, and you, at the end of the tour, you hear clients saying, "Oh my God, I thought this was going to be like this, but I didn't even know." Put the wolves aside. They said, apart from the wolves, I didn't even know I was going to see and learn such an amount of new things. And this is what we experience in every single of our trips. So yeah, keep your eye on that.
I would absolutely love to join you on one of those trips. I think I've been watching wolves in Yellowstone before, which is fantastic. But to do it in Europe would be pretty special, I think, closer to home.
And also it's very challenging, just to finish with them. It's also very challenging because they are real wild. Your expectations, your adrenaline when you see one and when you see a group, it's amazing. I mean, as I said, sometimes we are lucky to see them for over an hour. Sometimes we just have a glimpse, one crossing for half of a minute. But this is what made them amazing, how they move. And also, it's a huge result when, after working so hard, you get to see great views of them. So I think that's the big reward, and the job paid off, really. So
absolutely.
Yeah. You want to move slightly south, right?
Yeah.
So let's leave the mountains. The picture where the wolves are completely different than the picture of the next lovely animal we're going to talk about, the Iberian Lynx. And it's very different, and I think it's worth starting with this. And the main difference is because the fact of the Iberian lynxes are very well protected changed completely, dramatically, the panorama of the conservation towards this species. Now, if we do some Iberian lynx in numbers, we have to think that towards the end of the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century, early 1900s, the population of lynx was quite spread from the Midlands Plateau, foothills of Sierras, of this local mountain change, down to the south. Now, we have to consider here, for many reasons, the population demise hugely, because down towards the 1935s or even the 1940s, the population was relatively still healthy, but it was a massive shock from the 50s onwards. And one of the reasons, because they were hunted at the time, especially in Andalusia. But the main reason, I think the sole reason why Iberian lynxes declined so to the edge of extinction, it was mainly because of their diet, rabbits. Having said that, the benefit, endemic species sometimes evolve to, a habitat that you would say, well, they're the only one here. They have no competitors, and what's going on? Well, the problem with some native species is that they can go so specialized. They specialize quite on something, and this is the case of Iberian lynxes. They have specialized on rabbits, and once that's suffering and going, they go alongside. rabbits in the Iberian Peninsula, well, they're very well spread in the from the foothills down to the plateaus and plains, but they struggle with many diseases, myxomatosis. You have rabies, and that rabies came with a new cepa back in the beginning of the year 2000s, where again the population of rabbits declined massively. So that left the lynxes with no food. And this is why the population was so geographically limited down to the south, because that was the area, specifically all the southwestern Andalusia, as you were talking about, Doñana, and the mountains of northeastern Andalusia, completely wiped off from rabbits. And that's where the population started to suffer, to the point that they were down to 83 individuals, like 38 pairs reported, and the main population was up in the mountains. The work that the scientists and the local governments together, and now with the EU, have put all the efforts that they put on Iberian lynxes, went from no, it's not going to work, to yes, it's working, and but it took them a while. It took them a good 10 years or 15 years to see results. So it was a real long-term result project. But as I said, it was worth it. And the very first thing they target wasn't really the Iberian lynx itself as a species, but the rabbits, the food. They target that as a main strategy to bring healthy rabbits back to the wild, keep controlling them, keep controlling populations, distributing populations of healthy rabbits in certain areas, checking new population of rabbits in certain other areas that lynxes occur. And that worked quite well and still working. I mean, the efforts will never stop. And then, obviously, in order to reinforce the population of the lynxes, they brought down some of the species from the mountains down to the lowlands, which is particularly Doñana. And they made this mix in the reproduction program. They made this mixture between both the ones in the mountain lynxes and the ones in the lowland Iberian lynxes, and that sort of exchange, because with this demising, the genetic value of the cat was starting to get affected, and particularly in the population down in the lowlands, they were not thriving at all. They were really weak, and they were for no reason just getting quite ill and developing, problems to keep them going. So combining the successive population of the mountains with the lowlands, they created this mixed pattern, as we call them, because the pattern of the Iberian lynx in the mountains is very thin spots, whereas the one down in the lowlands are really thick. So now sometimes, you can see, and obviously the ones in the mountains, the males especially are more muscly because they climb boulders, they climb up hills, whereas down in the lowlands, they just walk around, meandering around dunes or the hessas, which are meadows with corcos, all flat. So that mixture created a very, very good genetic value, or added a very great genetic value to the animals, that they start thriving like crazy. Now the population, I think I told you the other day after the European Big Cat documentary that was launched in BBC last winter, I think. I was just monitoring up to 500 or sort of the population nowadays, but they throw a number of over 700, which is great, and it's what is known. So that it's a great hope for the species. It's always going to be endangered. Don't forget that endemic wildlife at a certain extent is always going to be endangered, because they could decline overnight. So for a big cat, well, we consider the Iberian Lynx within all this is quite small, much smaller than the Eurasian or Boreal lynx. But we still consider it complex because of its complexity. We still consider it in the group of big cats. But for a cat like this to thriving in an environment that was nearly, pushing them to the end of life, to extinction, it's amazing. It's amazing, and thanks to the efforts of all this lynx rescue program, and now with the Life project as well, which is injecting a lot of resources in it. Now they have stopped now doing reintroductions, because reintroductions cost a lot of money. But I think once a population start, succeeding towards the level that a lot of the calculations, the numbers were made before, during the planning of the project, I think reintroductions are a bit redundant, if you say that. Now, what they're trying to do is reintroduce lynxes in areas outside Andalusia where they occurred before. But again, they're starting from zero, because that was 5 years ago. They started releasing, reintroducing some individuals in Castilla-La Mancha and Extremadura, and also in some areas in southern Portugal. But as I said, in order to see results of how that population are going to thrive, we need to, it's question of time. It's question of time. So now we need to focus on the population we have in Andalusia. And the corridor is created between the lowland population and the mountain population. But that's still facing a bit of threats that I'm going to talk to you later on. But it's there, it's done, and they have been doing it quite well.
And it's amazing to think that this has gone from being an almost mythical species, one of the rarest cats in the world, to being something that we can really viably operate a tour to go and see. And in fact, Naturetrek were the first operator to set up tours to go and see the Iberian Lynx. And now we're at a position where we're able to run these tours with a good success rate of seeing them, and bringing valuable income into the local economy, to accommodations, restaurants, cafes. And how is the public perception of the lynx? Is it better than the wolves because there isn't that clash with farmers? Are people happy to have them in their local area?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier on, the fact of they being protected by the law changes everything. But not only that, cats, and there's no exception of felines, no exception of the Iberian Lynx, they just mind their own business. They just need their habitat, their food, and off they go. They don't really affect anybody. They don't compete with us. They actually like us because they feel confident and safe around us. In fact, the amount when we pioneer Iberian tours, and by the way, we are the only company who actually do both of the locations, within the corridor, because mainly some others just go to Sierra Morena, but we do both, and that enhances the chances to see them, but also enhances the chances of for our customers to comprehend the two different habitats, comprehend why the lynxes in the lowlands and why the lynxes up in the mountains have exchange, and how important it is to keep going that exchange of genetic value, which suddenly stopped when the population was to the edge of extinction. So apart from that, it's incredibly important to understand that, and obviously is being a big benefit to the locals and local hospitality business, and ecotourism in general has benefited to it has brought all these benefit from this activity.
And what is it like being on tour with you, looking for these lynx? Same question as I asked you with the wolves. Is it quite challenging?
Again, you know, it's the great part I always say of joining these tours is that nothing is written, nothing is guaranteed. You know, yes, we have a good rate of successful sightings and everything, but even for me, which I've seen thousands of wolves, thousands of lynxes, even for me, that's like the first time. You know, you go there, there's a challenge set, you don't know what's happening because you know it's never the same, never the same. You learn every time you go there. How did they behave? How did they turn up? Where are they going to turn up? How they're going to turn up? And what sort of chances are they going to give us to see them? Now, you know, again, you keep that that sort of bug, that electrifying bug, you know, around the group, around the fellow travelers, saying, "Gosh, we'll have to do it. We'll do it. Let's keep doing." Sometimes it's tedious, you know, keep looking and looking and looking, but you never get bored because there's some, again, completely different habitats. Beautiful picturesque habitats and landscapes and other wildlife, you know, beautiful wildlife. I mean, when we are down there in the autumn, you know, we always catch up with the wintering migratory species, the ones that are leaving, the ones who are actually arriving to spend the winter down there, and then up in the mountains, you know, the completely different perspective of habitat. Different animals, more endemics like Spanish ibex, for example, plenty of Iberian magpies, more Spanish imperial eagles, Cinereous vultures. Gosh, I mean, the list goes and goes and goes. And seeing places like Doñana and the contrast later on in the trip when we're up in the mountains, it's just mind-blowing.
Wow. And you must have many examples, but do you have one particular memory of watching an Iberian lynx that really stands out for you? Was it the first time you saw one, or has it been in the several years that you've been guiding there?
Well, to be honest, I can't even recall the first one I saw, how the circumstances were, because you get so excited that just instead of keeping that memory, suddenly just goes by in the back of your subconscious. I don't know, it's just lost in my brain. But I do have treasured in my mind a lot of the sightings, especially the ones, I would say, the ones that actually is not just a simple animal walking out of a bush, but that interaction when you are about to. And I remember once we were, you know, working really hard, and we were on the last 10 minutes of the trip out there. It's about to get dark, and you're there with people and you don't want to let them down. And suddenly when we are about to pack up and go, and when I was about to say, "I'm sorry guys, it didn't work this time," suddenly movement was caught by the corner of my eye, and there was this young male going out after a rabbit, but he was competing with another male that happened to be after the same rabbit. So that gave us an amazing show. It was quite memorable, actually, and just 10 minutes we were about to give up.
Wow.
So
Fantastic.
I could recall that one as one of the best. But as I said, every time we're going, one of the main signs of the species doing well is because every year after season after season, we see them more and more and more, or we hear them more and more and more. And as I said, there's nothing is guaranteed in wildlife. There might be the odd occasion we have gone empty-handed, but we know they're there. We know that the chances we have, you know, our knowledge has got a limit, and then it's all down to them from then. But every time, you know, we go, we learn more about these animals, and that's important in order to increase the chances to see them. But we have a fantastic rate.
And these animals, you've already said, are protected, so presumably they don't face a huge pressure from being shot or persecuted by people, what are their greatest threats then? What is their number one mortality cause?
I think Andalusia, being Andalusia, quite populated area, despite they have vast amount of mountains and mountain ridges, and Sierra Morena being one very inhospitable, very remote, which is some points of Sierra Morena really hard to access. I think the threats that Iberian lynxes face nowadays are the food. Their life depends of how rabbits do. So part of the conservation program do focus a lot on keeping the rabbit population healthy, and also making endless research on many individuals. You know, if they found dead individuals, they just try to look at the cause of death. If it was natural, but a rabbit just don't die just of a heart attack in the middle of nowhere. There's something behind. So they're working really well to tackle this in order to improve the amount of source of food of the lynx. I mean, lynx they have other things in the menu, like red leg partridge, for example. That'll be another, or jade, you know, any other big birds. But remember, they are specialized on rabbits, and that made them lazy. Some species are endangered because they are either a bit silly or stupid, or because they said, I just eat this, I'm sorry, and just cross their arms and do nothing. A lot of species, endemic species, are like that, believe you or not. In terms of birds, I remember when I was doing a lot of research for the Red Book data of endangered species, 80% of the species of birds in that book were endangered because they were stupid. You know, they didn't pursue a different food. They said, no, my food is this, I specialize in this, and if there's nothing there in my plate, sorry, I'm not going to work for other food. But in the case of lynxes, you know, they do depend a lot in you know, on their main source of food, which is rabbit. Now, and that's, as I said, it's been keeping up quite well. So the species are thriving in that respect, but they always keep an eye on that. I think the very sad cost, which is reality now and is causing a lot of the damage to the population, is roadkills. I remember I was quite shocked in 2017 when I got a report of 17 to 18 Iberian lynx killed in roads. And this is only because a lot of the territories, you know, cats move a lot, and especially young males could be really menacing, just move around a lot without keeping one virtual territory to meandering. And these are the ones to, you know, they're not really, as I said, they're very confident cats. They're likely to be, they see human beings as friends because they're not under threat at all. And that put them in being that confident is also is a double-edged sword. You know, they just go to areas, they hear a car, and they don't take any precautions, cross the road and bang.
And they are now building underpasses, aren't they, to go under these highways? Are these not really working then?
Well, there are a lot of passages and tunnels and wildlife crossings, you know, but not in every single key areas. And this is the I think that one of the saddest thing and frustrating things for the conservationists or people who work in the lynx conservation program is that those animals killed in those areas, they were found their bodies, but you know, they're animals that weren't known because they weren't monitored. It's really hard to monitor all that vast area. But the good thing is, after that happened, they have taken different measurements and they have built tunnels or crossing paths in those areas, or they have blocked the access to those roads better, so that obliged or forced the lynxes to move along and cross using the the tunnel. So a lot of improvements have been done in that sort of respect. But as I said before, endemic animals were always going to be endangered because of that fact. They're endangered because they're endemics. But being an endemic comes down to a price, and this is keeping your right foot up, keeping your territory up, and obviously the rest come from us as humans to help them out to thrive.
And just if you can answer in one or two sentences of each, what do you think the future is for the lynx and the wolves in Spain?
I think it's very positive. I think it's very positive. Again, with a lot of hiccups, and these hiccups don't really come to threats that they could find in the wild, but could come, believe you or not, from the administration. County councils distributing the money, distributing certain laws and certain penalties. Poaching is still a problem. Not as much as in the north with Iberian Lynx, Iberian wolves, but poaching is always going to be a problem in Spain. So, but as I said, it's the Seprona, the environmental police, is doing a great job, working really hard in order to protect them, being tough with rules and everything. But I think there's more positives than negatives. So I think their population, as we have seen in these last 15 years that we've been operating our tours down there, just to give you an example, the rate when we started doing this, it was so hard to see one. Now, I wouldn't say it is easy, still hard, but you can see that there are more numbers. The numbers have increased, the habitat has improved, and everything has changed or have improved. And he's still improving dramatically.
Well, that's very good to hear, and very much looking forward to resuming our tours there as soon as we can. And just to finish, Byron, just to take a step back from the wolves and the lynx and look at Spain as a whole and the public perception on wildlife there. Do you feel like it's changed since your involvement of leading tours there in Spain over the last 15 years? Are we seeing a phasing out of a bullfighting generation, and is there potential for a new wave of passionate young naturalists that are growing in Spain?
It has changed. Yeah, it has changed. In the last 15 years, we've been operating these tours. It has changed a lot. I wouldn't say, bullfighting, it's more a cultural thing that actually, new generations are stopping by, but that's going to keep going. But it's if you compare bullfighting fans from 20 years ago to now, it's more than half have gone. But mainly the hunting bit. Hunting, I would say, it could be what have changed a lot. A lot of the hunters, new generations, respect more these endemic and threat animals like lynxes, and their mentality have been more educated, if you see what I mean. A lot of the threats in terms of coming from the locals, mainly, or from the population, it's because of ignorance. So when you educate them more, they're consider more that facts, and they see that it's not just the fact of going there and hunt and make a big brawl hunting in the field where an endangered animal like Iberian lynx live. Now, I think yes, the perception of people of seeing this have changed a lot. There are less hunter aficionados. There are less bullfighting aficionados. I mean, a lot of I remember when we used to go to these areas, there was nobody there. It was literally us. Now it's just a lot of people. I think I counted 80 people last time we were there, just in this road, just trying to take a look for lynxes. So it has changed a lot, and it's going to continue with that.
Well, that's great to hear, and more may it continue to go in the right direction like that, and have more people involved in wildlife. Byron, it's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. I've really enjoyed sitting here listening to you telling us all about the endemic Iberian wolf and lynx. I certainly know where it's on my hit list for as soon as I can get out of the UK and go travelling again. It's fantastic to join you on a tour.
Anytime.
Great. Well, thanks very much for speaking to us.
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks for your attention. I mean, I could carry on ages here chatting about it, but thank you very much for your interest, and I hope these other people and our followers have found this very interesting as well.
To join Byron on a tour, you can see his upcoming trips on his profile on our website, along with more podcasts from our tour leaders for you to listen to, the links to which are displayed on your screen now. Thanks for listening.